Hello, welcome back to my channel. If it's this first video you've seen, I've got a load of content. I do historical miniature wargaming videos. If you are an existing subscriber, then thanks for subscribing and watching. And as ever, I'm happy for feedback and to chat about stuff in the comments sections. I do this because of my love of wargaming and chatting about it's certainly one of the things that keeps me sane at the moment. But anyway, Zouave regiments. So I'm going to show off the box of models, what I've done with them, what my thoughts on them, how to use them in black powder, etc. So this video is a wee bit later than I'd have liked, but I am supporting my local stores, physical retailers coming out of pandemic. I think it's important that if we want there to be high street model shops, wargaming shops, we support them. So these came in a bit later than the release date, and I've spent a bit of time building and painting some as well to show them off. So anyway, cracking on. Who were the Zouaves? The Zouaves were smart looking troops, and I think they're some of the best looking troops in the American Civil War, influenced by the French, and they were drilled more to be fast infantry. So not quite light infantry in terms of skirmishing, but certainly fast manoeuvres on the battlefield. Elmer E. Ellsworth was the man, I think he's from New York, who first brought the concept of Zouaves over to the States. And I think he was either a cadet or a militia commander, and he trained his unit up in Zouave style and went on tours showing them off and impressed a lot of military minds. So at the outbreak of the war, there were several regiments formed as Zouaves. And throughout the war, regiments were formed, and a couple of times regiments were converted to be Zouaves as part of a battle honour system. Certainly when I was reading about Zouaves, 1863, I think 3 Union regiments were brought up to be Zouaves. Now the key components of the Zouaves were short jackets, baggy trousers, and a fez or sometimes a turban. And that reflects the dress from the French colonial North Africa, from which the Zouaves influenced the French and obviously onto the Americans. So from the normal sort of blues and greys of the unit armies with kepis, Zouaves obviously cut a dashing figure on the battlefield. Now, whilst Ellsworth would command the 11th New York, the Fire Zouaves, made up of the fire brigades from New York who volunteered. Fascinating piece of history, just on a wee tangent, is Gangs of New York, the movie, and actually the book it's based on. The book's really interesting. It was written in, I think it was the 1920s, so it's actually quite relatively close to the history it's writing about compared to obviously now, which is almost a century or two afterwards. Anyway, back on point. So yeah, New York Fire Zouaves. They were not limited to the north, and the south would see perhaps the most famous Zouave unit of the war, the Louisiana Tigers. So anyway, the models. So you'll have seen that the models come in metal rather than resin. I certainly was expecting resin, and I was looking forward to seeing how these guys would be produced in resin, but obviously it came in metal. Now, if you are new to wargaming with metal and you've just done the plastic so far, you've got these fellas here, and this is called flash. So best thing to do, pair of clippers, you can just go around, chop off the flash. We needle file if you need to clean anything up. It's obviously twice as hard me trying to do this whilst talking and catching up video. So go around, take off all the flat. The other thing you'll need to be mindful of is making sure that the bases are flat as well. And with this, I still use a pair of clippers, and as you can see, I've got the top end on the side of the base, and this part where the bit of the extra metal on the base I want to take off, and I'm just going to gently push it and gently move it off. I've used files in the past or knives in the past to take that off, and I've found this is the quickest and best and safest method. Then all you're going to do is pop it on the ground and make sure it sits flat. Some of these had more flash on than others, but it's dead easy to take off. Once you've took the flash off the models, you're happy with them, then you just undercoat them with your normal undercoating. Obviously I'm using a lot of contrast paint, so I've undercoated these white ones. As soon as they're undercoated, they'll paint up in exactly the same manner as your regular plastic troops you've probably been doing. The only other thing you might want to consider with the metal models is varnish at the end, just to seal it in, because if plastic bangs on plastic, it doesn't chip as much. Whereas if metal bangs on metal, there's a chance the paint will chip off. So what have I done so far? So I have started painting a Union regiment. So fairly typical Zouave colours. Really enjoyed painting them. I think I've said before about if there is specialist units to paint, I will generally paint them. Contrast, mainly contrast paints, so the ultramarine blue for the jackets. I use Flesh Terror's red for the reds, which is a darker red, but I have gone over and highlight that with Evil Sun Scarlet to give it bright. The sort of putties is snakebite leather, a bit of Black Templar for all the blacks, Wildwood for the muskets with Iron Breaker, Iron Hand Steel for the metals, Gulliman Flesh for the skin, and just like I've done before, Graveyard Earth for the hair. And these actually painted up really quickly. You know, they're a bit more regimented than the standard troops, and a bit yellow. I land in yellow on the sort of tassels there. Yeah, a bit more regimented than the standard troops, so I speeded through these fellas. Also wanted to do a test for some Louisiana Tigers. So look at some artwork. This is the colour scheme it came up for. So Griff Charger Grey shell jackets. Bit yellow on their facings there. Other than that, colour's pretty much the same as the Union stuff. The stripes are just Kallistra blue painted on. And one of the things contrast paints, because it's already wet, it's quite easy to paint on in lines like that. I haven't had to mix and dilute paint, and it was really fun to do actually. I think once you get into straight the bits of uniforms, that's good. My plans for the Zouave box set is I'm obviously using 3 base regiments, so I'll get 5 regiments out of this. So I'll have 3 Union, 2 Confederates. Get some ad hoc commands sorted out for some of them, because the command base strip is like this. I'll have a couple of bases with the full command, and then I'll kind of adapt these in a regular stand next to them as well. So this one here, regular stand of infantry, maybe with a mounted commander in the middle. This one here, you've got the officer and a standard there as well. Might be the Confederates are do with 1 banner bearer, and the Unions keep it with 2 banner bearers in the unit where possible. No doubt I'll show them off. So how do they compare to regular miniatures from the Black Powder Civil War range? So the eye levels, etc., are exactly the same. You know, the Zouaves are a lovely match. Obviously, the Zouaves are bunched together a bit more because they're modelled in those groups of 5, but they're going to look pretty cool on the battlefield. Maybe compare the Confederates with the Confederates. The other thing I've got is this is one of my Union bases with the Kallistra front rank command. Trying to get matched up there. And again, the Kallistra are a wee tiny bit smaller than the Zouaves, but they'll look fine on the battlefield. And these are the Kallistra Zouaves. So straight away, the key difference with the Kallistra Zouaves, they're more advanced and going forward, and they're hunched over, so they do look physically smaller. Try and keep them level and show them off. But there you go. So my review of the Zouaves, it was a hefty box made of metal. The models are lovely, painted up really well. As you've seen, I really enjoyed them, painting something different as well. I've talked in a previous video about having a palette cleanser between units. Zouaves could use that. How would I use them in games? So if I wanted to differentiate different units, or maybe it's a unit which had a reputation for being better, but even though I still use the same rules, could use just Zouaves as normal units. If I was going to introduce some rules to them, I would maybe look at steady rule, which ignore the first break test to show the sort of extra land of the Zouave units. Or tough fighters, reroll 1 melee dice. You know, you're not going to get into melee that often, so it's not going to be a massive bonus, but it's just enough to justify the kind of nice looking elite units on the battlefield. If you really wanted to look at the sort of role of light infantry, the faster drill and getting into combat and getting stuck in, you might even want to give them uppity, which removes a -2 command penalty for charging in and gives them +1 for charging in. Certainly I've read, I think the Louisiana Tigers, one of their battlefield rules was to skirmish and take on enemy artillery. And sort of closing with artillery and engaging with it in the hand-to-hand combat would be a good use of that. So anyway, that's the Zouaves. That's what I've done so far. I'm going to carry on painting. I've got a couple of sprues of Confederates on the paint station as well. I'm getting closer to being able to antitum. I'll be doing when that's ready, I'll be doing a series of videos on that, how get my battlefield ready, what the forces look like, and I'm even going to try and get like a video done partway through a game and show off some of the game as well. But anyway, I'm having a great time wargaming at the moment. I hope you're having a great time wargaming at the moment, and I look forward to chatting to you in the chat. So that's bye for now. Goodbye.